Welcome back everyone to a video, and today we are going over every single team in the NFC North, talking about their season, breaking things down, talking about certain players to watch, schedule, record predictions, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you guys have been keeping up with the series, we have now done the AFC South and the NFC South. This is now the NFC North. Next will be the AFC North, and then probably back to the NFC East, then AFC East, and then NFC West, and then finish off with the AFC West. Now, I'm doing this once a week, and this should take us up to 1 week before kickoff. If I happen to get behind, then there might be a video coming out like literally the day before the Thursday night kickoff game. So we'll see what happens, but I will have all of these out before the season starts. That is for sure. If you're going to enjoy today's video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I would appreciate all the support there. And yeah, so jump right into this. We're going to start with the Vikings. Now, a quick recap for 2023. It was, going pretty good with Kirk Cousins until it wasn't. Obviously, he goes down. Jefferson goes down. You have like the Joshua Dobbs Linsanity run, basically, where he had a couple really good weeks, and after that, kind of back to struggling. The defense, while not looking great on paper, did actually play pretty good under Brian Flores, so huge credit there. It does suck because, to me, the Vikings 2023 season looks like a what-if more than anything else, because the way Kirk Cousins was playing, if he and Jefferson managed to stay healthy, that could have been a serious team in the NFC, but again, just unfortunate. Not really a great rushing year at all from them. Alexander Madison had 700 yards and no touchdowns. I actually didn't realize that until right now, I'm not going to lie. Then Ty Chandler had 461 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also with Madison, he had a big fumble issue as well. Just a bit of a disappointing season. I think there was honestly, I don't want to say hype around him, but there was definitely some promise considering like he had shown flashes in previous seasons. Now he had the backfield like really all to himself as running back one. Did not really live up to it. And again, now Ty Chandler's in there with Aaron Jones going into this year. We'll get into all that in just a second, though. But yeah, rushing-wise, pretty lackluster. Receiving-wise, Justin Jefferson still passed 1,000 yards despite missing 7 games, which is, pretty impressive. He had 5 touchdowns. Hawkinson had 960 with 5 more touchdowns, and then he also goes down pretty late last year, actually, I believe. I think it was, if that's, week 16, whatever it was. So I'm not sure if he's going to be ready for the start of this season. I don't think he will. That was like a torn ACL and MCL, I think. So bad injury there, but good season up until that point. And then Jordan Addison, the rookie, 70 receptions, 911 yards, and 10 touchdowns. A lot of touchdowns for the rookie. He was very solid, very reliable throughout the year. So I expect, him to continue on that pace going into this season. KJ Osborne, who I always felt was a bit of an underrated guy on this team, had 540 and 3 more touchdowns. He's now gone in New England. So, again, receiving-wise, I don't think the Vikings' issues are offensive weapons. It's just more the question mark of actually distributing that ball, at least going into 2024. But before we get to that point, real quick, defensively last year, Josh Metellus actually played pretty well for them for a safety. Same with Cameron Bynum. I also want to highlight Ivan Pace Jr., who I believe was a rookie. He was probably, he was an amazing rookie linebacker. I'm not sure if you could say he was the best, but I think he was certainly up there. So huge name to watch going into this season for another huge step from him. But he played great. You lose to Neil Hunter in free agency this year after the season he just had, of course. And then DJ1, we also lose him too. But again, I think on paper this defense looked to be a bit rough. They played certainly above my expectations going into last year. And I'm very interested to see them again this year. So with that said, this is the depth chart as of right now. And in a second, we're going to talk about some of the players that I kind of want to highlight real quick, like some newcomers and some young guys. I'll have a thing on the screen for that when we get there. But just for the offense right now, just kind of breeze over it. Now, obviously, the big thing about the Vikings is J.J. McCarthy. More specifically, at least in my opinion, just the quarterback position in general, because Sam Darnold, he does not have that locked down. I got to see a lot of Sam Darnold in Carolina, being a Panthers fan. I always feel like Darnold is not as bad as he's made out to be. He's honestly not bad as a rusher, but he's just wildly inconsistent. You never really know what you're getting, at least in the, passing game, which is pretty important for a quarterback. So I would be surprised if we don't see J.J. McCarthy this season at all. I would not be as surprised if he doesn't start week 1. I could see them going forward with Darnold, but come week 5, if Darnold's shaky and this team needs a new boost and some new life, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't put McCarthy in there. Other than that, you bring in Aaron Jones, actually a really nice move. Obviously, he gets banged up a bit and he does have some injury concerns, but he's great out of the backfield, very, very good when healthy. You still have Jefferson, Addison, now Brandon Powell up for wide receiver 3 after losing KJ Osborne. Hawkinson is currently questionable. I'm not sure if he'll be ready for the start of the season, but Josh Oliver is a competent starting tight end, so I'm not too worried about that. And then O-line, Christian Darrisaw, Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Brian O'Neill. So again, not a terrible offensive line either. This offense, it looks great. It's just that quarterback position, you got to pin that down, and it's a bit up in the air right now. Now, defensively, one of the biggest things is losing Danielle Hunter, but you also got Jonathan Greenard, so you essentially just kind of switched like edge rushers with the Texans. You kind of, got Greenard from them, and they got Danielle Hunter in free agency, so you kind of switched, which is pretty funny. Again, Ivan Pace Jr., though, to highlight him, really high ceiling, showed a lot of flashes last year, was quite good. You bring in Blake Cashman from Houston, I believe it was. And then you also bring in Andrew Van Ginkel as well from Miami. Although he had got hurt last year, I'm not sure if that's going to affect him going into week 1, but he's still a big name to highlight. And then Cameron Bynum had a great year last year. Harrison Smith, the veteran. Byron Murphy Jr., Josh Metellus. These are some of the players that I really do want to keep an eye on for the Vikings. Now, again, I want to be very clear. This is not the best players on each side of the ball. These are just newcomers and young guys that I really want to highlight. These could be second-year players or third-year players, however young, but then also guys that just are new to the team and how I could see them performing. As you can see at the bottom, I have kind of like a little just scale basically for how I'm kind of seeing this. Again, the gem is kind of like top 5 across the league, or I guess top 5-ish is what I have. So it's like, top 5 to 7, maybe even 8. And then the star, which I have, is relative to the team. So it's something that I can see being a star, relative to the team. Not like a, all-star across the league, but could be a star on like this particular team's, offense or defense. So McCarthy, I gave the eyes to. I don't think there's enough there for me to say he could be a star. I think he has plenty of weapons around him to be a star, but him on his own, I'm not confident enough to give him that. I think obviously he's a player to watch because in this good of an offense, this good of a system, his ceiling could be relatively high. But again, not enough there for me to give him the star immediately. Aaron Jones, I think, absolutely could be a star. They need a burst at running back compared to last year. Aaron Jones can definitely be that. I think Ty Chandler can handle that role as well, so I gave him the eye as far as just a player to watch. Jordan Addison could be a star. I really feel like him and Jefferson could be one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL, probably top 5, assuming Addison continues to develop and Jefferson, just stays Justin Jefferson. But again, that also starts and ends with the quarterback. We've seen excellent teams be held back from poor quarterback play, like the Jets recently, or even the Falcons recently. So again, I see them on their own as great players. We just got to have it all connect from the quarterback point to be more confident, at least in my opinion. Defense, I went ahead and gave Dallas Turner the star. I didn't mention him a second ago, but I want to mention him here. This is someone that was taken very far back compared to where he probably should have gone, but because it was such an offensive-heavy draft, a lot of quarterbacks went very high, they got him for a pretty good price, and this is someone that could seriously be a contender for Defensive Rookie of the Year. The Vikings could honestly put together a very good defensive line. I think Turner will get plenty of reps, and I think the talent is there for him to actually be a star in year 1. So it might be a little bit of a bold take there, but I think the potential is there. And I gave the star to Cam Bynum, Greenard, and Ivan Pace Jr. I think these are all players that can continue to take another step forward. Greenard had a great year last year in the Texans, and I don't see why he couldn't continue that production on the Vikings. And in fact, if Turner's a big player in year 1, that can work together for them to have a really good pass rush duo there. So, again, I think in Brian Flores' system, he's going to find a use for these guys, and he's going to have them have a productive impact on the game. That's one of the biggest things he can do is he makes a lot of guys that maybe aren't the most talented. He puts them in the right spots to make plays. He's just very, very good at what he does. So I trust that. For really all of these players, I gave them all the star because I think they all have star potential for this Vikings defense. Now, again, left off some players like Harrison Smith, who's obviously a great player, but we know what we have in him. He's not a newcomer. He's not young, so I don't have him on here. But yeah, so that's just one of the players I wanted to highlight for the Vikings. And overall, I do feel like on paper the Vikings have a pretty good team. It's really not even the players that or it's not even really like the players and like looking at this on paper that scare me from the Vikings. It's this division and how tough it's become, and honestly, the Vikings' schedule. They have a pretty tough schedule. Real quick though, to briefly make it very, very simple to summarize, I made a little chart. I've done this for all teams just to show this real quick. I see the Vikings offense and defense being pretty similar. I think the offense definitely has a higher ceiling than the defense, but again, at quarterback, I'm not really sold either way, so I can't put that where I think it really could be. If McCarthy is even just a pretty average quarterback in year one, this can be a very, very productive Vikings offense. But as I mentioned before, the Vikings schedule is actually very difficult. To be fair, it probably depends a little bit on how you see Jordan Love in year two and Caleb Williams in year one. Also, Jordan Love, full season starting year two. Obviously not a second year player, but just to be clear there. I think a lot of it depends on that, because if you don't see this division being super competitive, then you probably don't think it's a very hard schedule. But even out of division, you got guys like Houston, San Francisco, New York, LA, Indianapolis should be decent. This is not an easy schedule. Even Atlanta. This would be a very, in my opinion, very tough schedule regardless of how good the Vikings are. But then you compare it to like the rest of this division and how close it's going to be. I see this as being pretty tough for the Vikings, so let's get into my actual record prediction right now. So to be honest with you guys, I love the Vikings on paper, but I can't really give them much more than 8 to 9 wins. I lean a bit to 8 wins rather than 9 wins. I think if any game could go either way that I have being a loss right now, it would be the Jaguars game. I think the Vikings could definitely come out on top of that. But other than that, you look at this, I don't think they can beat San Francisco. Granted, they did last year, but that was with a Kirk Cousins. I don't think you really beat Houston. I don't think you beat Green Bay in Green Bay. I think the Lions sweep you. I do, for the record, have the Vikings splitting with both the Bears and the Packers. I think it's very, very possible. I think the Colts come to the Vikings Stadium. They beat them there. And then other than that, look at their wins, though. I gave the Vikings a win against the Falcons. I don't think Kirk goes in there and wins, to be honest. I expect that to be a very, energetic environment for that game. I don't think the Vikings are bad. And again, we technically haven't seen the Falcons at all, even though personally I'm very high on the Falcons. You can go watch my NFC South prediction video on them. But still, I give that game to the Vikings. I have them winning in Seattle as well, which could be a bit of a tough game. But down the stretch, I think both teams will be pretty similar at that point. So I did get that one to the Vikings. But, I think them beating the Jets in Minneapolis is very, very possible too. So I gave them the win there. It's tough for me because I'd love to give them, a better record. But looking at this, it's a tough schedule. I think you got to capitalize on the Giants, the Titans, and the Cardinals. Those are 3 games you have to win. Those are by far the easiest games on your schedule. Because after that, it's probably a pretty big jump to the next team that's, is the Seahawks. Are they closest that I gave the Vikings a win to? Compared to like the Titans and Giants and Cardinals, it's probably them or the Colts in my opinion. Actually, or the Jaguars. But again, it's tough. I could see them going 9-8 just as easily, but I don't think they actually hit that 10-win mark, unfortunately. I think this year is more of a feeling out year for quarterback. I think if you happen to have a star in J.J. McCarthy, then this ceiling gets raised a good bit. But if you don't, then I think it's a year to figure out what you have and then continue building, and then next year can be that 10-win hopeful season if everything goes to plan and you make a playoff run then. I don't really think it happens this year. I think the Vikings are definitely good enough to compete in their division, but until I'm more confident in the quarterback, I can't rank them much higher. And because I'm not going to do this during the season, after I've seen the quarterback, I got to kind of just go up in the air with it. I don't really know what to expect from McCarthy or Darnold for that matter. I think it'll be average quarterback play, I would hope. But even then, it's a tough schedule. So I had the Vikings going 8-9 to 9-8. My final prediction, though, is 8-9 for the Vikings over to team number 2. Next team up is the Bears. Now, look, the Bears are, in my opinion, one of the most improved teams heading into 2024. Same as the Vikings, it's a very competitive division. But again, we'll get into all that in just a second. Quickly to recap 2023 for the Bears. pretty underwhelming again. You saw some flashes from Justin Fields, then he gets hurt. Love the connection with DJ Moore. Jalen Johnson on defense, huge highlight there. But overall, just kind of fell short. Passing wise, Fields threw for 2,562 yards, 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Really wasn't a whole lot there. I think you saw, the running ability. I think the progression, the field progression and reading reading the defense, I don't think it improved a whole lot. It was a huge concern, and I don't think it was much better. I think overall, Fields has slowly gotten better. I think he was in a very bad situation, but regardless, out of the way now. You got your quarterback in Caleb Williams, and we will talk about him for sure in a minute here. Rushing wise, though, again, Fields, it's there. 657 yards, 4 touchdowns. Herbert 611 with 2, and then Foreman with 425 and 4, and then even Roschon Johnson 352 and 2 more. So it was a relatively well-rounded rushing attack, but I mean you look at the games played, and it's like Fields missed 4, Herbert missed 5, Foreman missed 8, even Johnson, he only missed 2, but still it was the running back room was a little bit banged up this year for Chicago. Receiving wise, DJ Moore 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns, and then Cole Kmet 719 and 6 touchdowns. I'm not really upset about the Bears getting him, because it's like if a front office is trying to draft a young quarterback and they feel that they should give another team their best receiver to acquire said quarterback instead of the defensive end the team originally wanted, why not? I mean, yeah, do it. Like I can't even be mad about it, because it's just so stupid the Panthers would actually agree to it. It's like, yeah, if I was the Bears, I would take that in a heartbeat too. I hope DJ Moore goes off for the Bears, because it's just so mind-blowingly dumb Carolina did that I hope the best for DJ Moore, and I'm happy to see him playing well. I think there's always I feel like on social media at least, there's like this Bears fans and Panthers fans going at each other, and it's like I don't really get it, because as a football fan, I think it makes the game really exciting with the Bears getting DJ Moore, and I refuse to make myself get that mad at something so unbelievably stupid that the Panthers did that I just, I'm not along, I accept it, and will just drive me better in the future, because I don't know why Moore would have been available for trade when you're trying to get a young quarterback. You would think you would pair the young quarterback with the receiver, because that makes more sense. Back to the Bears, though. Yes, I think it is a great room of wide receivers, especially now going to 2024. I like the tight end room as well. I mean, it's honestly a well-built roster, and I give Ryan Poles a ton of credit for that. Defensively, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds both had the most tackles on the team, with Brisker coming in third. I mean, to me, the biggest guy to highlight on defense is Jalen Johnson, who's not even on the screen right now, which I'm not sure, unless I can't read. Oh yeah, I couldn't read. He was literally right there. You secure him for, I'm not sure how many more years that contract was, but it was a great deal. He's a great young corner. He's, probably pretty close to top 5 heading into next year, to be honest. So that was a big move for them. I like the Bears defense. I'm not going to say it's invincible. I don't think it's as much improved as the offense is, and so now looking to 2024, thanks to the Panthers, the Bears land Caleb Williams out of USC. You bring in DeAndre Swift for running back in free agency. You have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen in free agency, and then you draft Roma Dunze with your original pick, which is the top 10 from the wide receiver from Washington. You get Cole Kmet, you have Cole Kmet still. You get Gerald Everett from LA. You have Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, Nate Davis, and Darnell Wright for offensive line. Again, an offensive line they have still been working on since it was, pretty bad 2 years ago. I would say it has improved, but again, not invincible like that defense. Right now, to me, this is the offense I'm looking at where I'm like, this roster can do something. I was not really sold on Fields. I think the potential was there to build around him. It just, honestly, in my opinion, it's just unlucky for Fields. The timing of them getting enough to build this roster up just didn't correspond with him being able to progress as much as they would have liked. And, it's just kind of the business part of the sport. You get Caleb Williams, now the offense looks way better than it did whenever Fields had to take over the team. So it looks great going to next year. I have a lot of faith in Caleb Williams. I think he is a great player. I don't think he's league altering, but I think he is going to be better than Justin Fields. And another thing too, I've said this before, in like my past videos, people try and make a point of like, Caleb Williams to come in here and, take over the league by storm and all this stuff. But in my opinion, if he does that, great. If he ends up being like a top 5 quarterback, that's awesome. But looking at this roster, he does not need to be that. He needs to be really just a little bit of above average quarterback to operate this offense super efficiently. I mean, you have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, who are now proven veterans will make plays. Rome Odunze, who again is a rookie, but it looks like he'll be, a pretty productive receiver. He now gets to sit under 2 great route runners as well, so I like that situation for him. You still have Cole Kmet. You bring in DeAndre Swift. I mean, this is like a really, really well-built roster. I've said it before, but it just looks like it's been very well assembled with a goal in mind. Now you just plug in the quarterback and you're hoping it can all come together. And in my opinion, it will. Defensively speaking, this is where the question mark kind of starts to pop up for me because, again, I like Jalen Johnson a lot. I'm interested in Kyler Gordon again this year, Jaquan Brisker, even just Kevin Byard, the veteran who isn't what he once was, but still he's a proven veteran that can give you good reps at safety. To me, the question mark comes in at defensive line. Again, you're still building up the roster. I would expect this to be addressed in the next season or two because Montez Sweat is really the best you've got, in my opinion. I think that will probably be, if there will be any weakness on defense, in my opinion, I'll be putting money on defensive line. But again, no roster is perfect. This is a much improved roster from just a couple of seasons ago. So to me, Jalen Johnson is a huge name to watch, and as I said before, I do want to get into a few of those players to highlight for me. Again, these players are not people I think are like best on the roster. These are like newcomers and rookies and stuff like that. That's why, someone like DJ Moore isn't on here. He's a proven guy. We know what we have in him. I don't think he's quite top 5, so he doesn't have the gem next to his name. He's not on the list, but I want to highlight some other guys instead. And so again, offensively for me, Caleb Williams, I gave the star to. I think he can be a star in this offense. I don't think there's any reason for him not to succeed. As a rookie, I think there will definitely still be growing pains, and you will see the inexperience, but you really can't ask for a much better situation to be walking into as a rookie quarterback. So I gave him the star, gave Keenan Allen the star, proven veteran, but he is a newcomer, and we know we have in Keenan Allen. DeAndre Swift, I gave the star to as well. I think he can be a great running back for them. And then Rome Odunze, I gave the eyes to. I'm not totally sure what to expect from him in year 1 because of the 2 receivers he has to technically fight for targets. So I would see I expect more of a relatively quiet year from him. I don't think he'll be like, in the offensive rookie of the year running or anything like that. I think he could have like a 400 to 500 yard season. But I don't think much more than that quite yet. I think as Keenan Allen will probably wrap up his career in the next few years, you'll see more of Rome Odunze and his role continue to grow. So yeah, that's kind of how I just see that. Defensively, I gave Jalen Johnson the gem. I really think he's a top 5 to 7, 8 corner heading into this season. I think it was a big deal to lock him down for as good of a deal as you got with him, to be honest. I gave Montez Sweat the star because I do think he's a good player. I do think he can be the leader of that defensive line. I gave Jaquan Brisker the eyes to because, again, I'm not going to say quite star potential, but I do think that ceiling is definitely there for him. So whether it happens this year or not, he just got to watch, in my opinion. And honestly, I gave Kevin Byard the star. I know he's declined, but, you as a proven veteran at safety, you can be a huge veteran presence for this team, and so I gave him the star. Maybe he doesn't need to be on here, but I feel like I gotta highlight him for what he can really bring to the table, and I think what he will bring to the table for the Bears. So once again, getting back to it, I think Caleb Williams will have his struggles. He's gonna turn the ball over. He's gonna force the ball sometimes when it's definitely not necessary. But overall, I think he's going to be what you need in year 1. I don't think he's going to obviously hit his ceiling or anything crazy in year 1. I don't see a CJ Stroud type of rookie season, but I think we'll see the Bears get their quarterback. You'll be able to tell it's their quarterback. And so as far as the little chart thing goes, that's really just kind of how I see it. I see the offense being a bit better than the defense because of the defensive line's question mark to me. But again, it's a well-rounded offense. If Caleb Williams, like I've said before, is even just, average to above average, it should be a very efficient offense. Tons of weapons everywhere. Should be really exciting to watch. Defensively, again, the D-line holds me back from bringing them up a whole lot more than that. But the secondary, I think there's definitely potential there. Same at linebacker, too. So I am excited for the Bears this season. Now, going over to the Bears record, though, and again, like I said, for the Vikings, it's pretty tough, especially in the division. Now, I will say, in my opinion, the Bears do have some easier out-of-division opponents because they have the Titans like the Vikings do, of course. But they also have the Panthers, and they have Arizona like the Vikings. They also have Washington, though, too. So I think they have a bit more wiggle room, if that makes sense, out of division. But again, as far as those division opponents go, it should be very tough every single game. And then out of division, you have to play the NFC West. So that's pretty tough as far as the 49ers go. Then the AFC South with the Texans and the Colts should be competitive. I think you can beat the Jaguars, though. Again, I think this team will have its struggles, but the ceiling is there, and I think playoff hopes are definitely there. And so getting into the Bears' exact record prediction, I have them going 10-7. I had them beating the Titans. I don't think they can beat the Texans or the Colts. I'm not having their ceiling be that high. I have them beating the Rams in Chicago, though, and I'm actually very high on the Rams this season, so that's a pretty big win for me, at least for like my rankings. I have them beating Carolina. It'll be the Caleb Williams, Bryce Young game. I think Bryce Young, the Panthers will be a bit improved, but not in the level of the Bears. I think they lose that. I think the Bears have that win streak, though. I think they go from the Rams all the way through the Vikings with wins. Then I think that late season will catch up to them because it will be a very young quarterback there. I think there's going to be growing pains for that late season experience. I think you lose to the Lions in Detroit, 49ers in San Francisco. I think you drop to the Vikings in Minneapolis. I think you lose to the Lions in Chicago. I do think they beat the Seahawks, though, and then they lose out on the Packers as well in Lambeau. So, again, this could be, I wouldn't say 11 wins. I think, if anything, it'd be more 9-8 if they drop that Rams game. But again, crazier things have happened. I don't know. I see this being a team fighting for a playoff spot. I think playoffs are definitely in the cards for the Bears. It just depends how this division shakes out because you got a lot of competition. So, again, 10 wins, though, for the Bears after they have slowly fought and tried to get to that 500 mark. I think they found their quarterback. I think this team starts taking some steps now, and I think it's, maybe not playoff year, but you're at least going to be in consideration. Maybe you get knocked out because some other team, like, ties or something like that, but this team is good enough, I think, to make the playoffs in the NFC. So with that said, I see the Bears having a good season. I think it will finally be the year the fans have been looking for. I think it'll be exciting. I'm not sure if they make the playoffs, how far I'd really take them. Of course, that would really depend on, the round one matchup and all that kind of stuff. But again, I don't see them getting more than 10 wins. I think if anything, it'd be more 9-8. But if they cracked 11 wins in year one with Caleb Williams, that would be quite the feat in a very competitive division. So again, anything's possible. That's how I see the Bears season going, though. And next is next team. And the next team up is the Packers. Again, this was a team that was very, very good in Jordan Love's first full year starting. There was definitely some struggles at times with Jordan Love, but that second half of the season, things started to really click. Youngest offense in NFL history, and they ended up upsetting Dallas in Dallas. Almost got past San Francisco as well in San Francisco. So this team has a very high ceiling, in my opinion. Jordan Love has a lot to offer. I think they've made some cool moves in the offseason. So, again, to quickly recap 2023, Jordan Love at times really struggled at the beginning of the season, but when we get into it, he passed for 4,159 yards, 32 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and a very young offense. You had a lot of guys step up, a lot of really good playmakers. Aaron Jones, 656 and 2 touchdowns, and then Dylan, 613 and 2 touchdowns. Also, Jordan Love, for what it's worth, 247 and 4 rushing touchdowns too. So it was a pretty solid season rushing. I wouldn't say it's anything special, but both backs contributed a lot. And then receiving-wise, I was really sleeping on Jaden Reed heading into this past season, so that was definitely my bad. He had 793 and 8 touchdowns as a rookie. Romeo Doubs, 674 and 8 more touchdowns. Dontavian Wicks, 581 and 4 more touchdowns. And Christian Watson, 422 and 5 touchdowns in only 9 games played. And then even the young tight ends, Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, 2 touchdowns for Tucker Kraft, 1 for Musgrave, both around that 350 mark. It was a really exciting offense. I think it was, in my opinion, it was one of the more exciting kind of like storylines to follow throughout the season because, I was very interested in Jordan Love ever since they drafted him at a time where everybody was kind of like, wow, quarterback in round one when you have Aaron Rodgers, very interesting. We finally get to see him, and I think he really benefited from being able to just sit and learn. I think it was definitely, you could tell at the beginning of the season, in my opinion, that there was definitely like this is actually happening kind of thing. There were some weird mistakes, but it was a first-year quarterback. It was a first-year guy starting, so, or first full season starting. So it definitely happens. As the season went on, though, he got more and more comfortable, and it was a really, really good offense. Defensively, he had Quay Walker in year 2 with 14 games played and 118 total tackles. Led the team by, honestly, a pretty good margin. You also had, and I wanted to highlight Rashawn Gary, who had 44, no, yes, how did I just lose him again? He had 48 total tackles and 8 sacks as well. Joined by Rashawn Gary, who had around the same amount of tackles and 9 sacks there as well. And then also Kenny Clark, 7.5 sacks too for defensive tackles, so pretty good there. Packers defense was a very frustrating one at times. It was pretty bad throughout the season, and then it kind of stepped up when they needed them most toward the end of the year. Obviously, the huge game in Dallas in the playoffs, but again, up until that point, they had struggled. I mean, Bryce Young threw for like 315 or something on him. And they kind of stepped up a little bit, but overall there just wasn't enough talent at certain spots. I think they addressed that though, and I'm excited to get into that. So the 2024 depth chart as of right now, you got Jordan Love there, of course. You bring in Josh Jacobs in free agency, which is a really nice move in my opinion. Josh Jacobs is a great player who I think was just kind of let down by the Raiders' just lack of doing anything good, to put it that way. Because he individually had great seasons despite the Raiders just really struggling. So I'm excited to see him in a very good offense. You also have Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie, at backup. He's a guy to watch for sure. Christian Watson, wide receiver. Romeo Doubs, wide receiver. And Jaden Reed, very good wide receiver core, assuming they're all going to, kind of continue to develop. Christian Watson needs to prioritize staying on the field because he has a pretty high ceiling. This is a big receiver with really good speed, but, he's just been banged up. Dobbs, though, is a great young receiver. So is Jaden Reed, and really so is Dontavian Wicks, who's wide receiver 4. So they have a nice rotation. Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, 2 good tight ends as well. Then offensive line, Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, Sean Ryan, and Zach Tom. So I'm going to be honest, not super confident in how this O-line stacks up with other offensive lines across the league. So Packers fans, let me know down below what you guys really think of this offensive line, because I wasn't able to get like a super solid gauge on that. But assuming this is somewhat similar to what it was last year, then it should be, I guess around that point. Although I believe they drafted tackle Jordan Morgan to help out there, so that's a good move too from Arizona. And then defensively, you got Preston Smith there. You got Lucas Van Ness behind him going into year 2. Definitely someone to watch in year 2. Kenny Clark still there. Sean Gary still there. Quay Walker now going to year 3. Edgerrin Cooper, the rookie, starting at linebacker. He is definitely someone to watch in year 1. You have Jair Alexander. Obviously, a guy to watch, proven veteran, we know what we have there. But Xavier McKinney, in my opinion, was a huge signing for the Packers. And safety was something that they kind of struggled at last year. Secondary as a whole, but especially safety and depth at safety. There really was not a lot there. Xavier McKinney is quite good, and he was good for New York as well. So I am excited to see what he can really bring to the table now that they acquired him. So that's a big move. As far as the players I wanted to highlight, though, to get into some of those guys, once again, I'm not highlighting guys that, have been on the team, and we kind of know what we have there. Now, Jordan Love, even though he is young, I, of course, gave the start to because, he's, on the team. Even though he's not like a newcomer or anything, he's still young, so I want to have him on this list. I do think that this is an offense, it's worth getting excited about because from what you saw last year, not a whole lot has changed. And in my opinion, it's honestly probably improved a bit. So I'm actually pretty high on the Packers heading into this season. But again, you got Jordan Love there. You got Josh Jacobs coming in, who I think is definitely can be a star for this offense. He's shown the talent in Las Vegas. He gets those reps now in a much better offense. It's very exciting to me. Jaden Reed, I gave the star to. He was really impressive his rookie year, and I want to see that again. I think he develops. I know he's not like wide receiver 1 on the depth chart, but I think he'll have a huge year. I gave Dontavian Wicks the eyes because, again, he had a pretty solid year, and even though he's wide receiver number 4, I think he could be someone that really surprises some people. And then, of course, Marshawn Lloyd, some eyes there, too. Just a guy to watch, running back, too, as the rookie. He can get some big reps down the stretch. And then defensively, Lucas Van Ness going into year 2, I gave a little eye to, just as a guy to watch. I'm not going to quite give him the star potential quite yet. Not that he can't be. I just want to see a bit more before I give him that kind of grade. Edgerrin Cooper I gave the eye to as well. Obviously, he has potential, especially starting at linebacker in this defense. But again, just being a rookie, I'm going to go give him just the eyes for right now. And then Xavier McKinney and Quay Walker, I both gave the star to. I gave both the star because Xavier McKinney, I loved that signing for Green Bay. I really, really did. And then Quay Walker, again, in year 3, who's proven to be a guy that can just fly all over the field and get tackles for him. So I'm excited about this Packers offense and defense, honestly, especially the offense just because of Jordan Love and how young it is and how promising it looked. But, don't, sleep on the defense either because it's a pretty good defense, assuming it's improved from last year. Again, that defensive coordinator just had to go. I can't remember his first name, but I know it was Barry was the last name. I remember all kinds of Packers fans on social media always saying his name and stuff like that. But, again, I think it's going to be an improved defense. I think it's going to be an improved offense. It's just, as I've said for other teams in this division, I will continue to say, this division, out of nowhere, honestly, just got incredibly competitive. It's always been relatively competitive. Now you got a lot of teams that have their eyes on, like deep playoff runs. Before we get into that, though, as far as the chart goes, I have both the Packers offense and defense being around the same. I do think the offense is still going to be better because I think we've seen a full season what the offense can really do. The defense, I do think, can be like that A- range. But again, it's not perfect, and I think it might look a little weird at first with a different defensive coordinator in there. I think it'll be one of those things as the year goes on, they mesh a bit better. But I think they've improved the unit, so huge plus for them. I have them being somewhere in like that A- to A year, and they can compete in the NFC, especially their division. So I do see a very exciting year from the Packers. Although, like I've said before, this schedule is definitely something to keep an eye on because if they happen to slip, 3-4 games, it could really cost you, come playoff time. So looking at this, you got the Eagles in week 1. That is definitely a winnable game, to be honest. I think the Eagles will be much improved from last year with their coaching changes. But again, going to Lambeau week 1, I think it'll be tough. Actually, no, sorry, that is the game that's actually in South America. So that's actually my mistake. That's that Friday. That should be a very interesting game. Really for both teams because, it's the first game to ever be played in South America, I believe. So pretty exciting for, the international audience there. But as far as the division goes, you guys have heard me say it before by now. It's going to be very competitive, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to my record prediction at this point. And so I actually have the Packers going 10-7, the same as the Bears. And I do think there are games that could go either way here. I think they open up, though, on a 4-game win streak. I think they dropped to the Rams in L.A., and I picked them to beat Houston in Lambeau. That's how confident I am in this Packers team this year. I think they will be competitive with some of the better teams now, like Houston, while both are still pretty young. I have them losing in Jacksonville, though. It just seems like one of those games that, like, you go on the road after a tough opponent and you just kind of slip. But again, that's one where that could go the other way. That could be an 11-6 season for the Packers. I have them splitting with the Bears. So again, even then, that's kind of a surprising loss because the Packers have a very good record against the Bears. Might be a bit more of kind of like a hot take thing there, but I do have them splitting actually with the Bears. So, but again, if you're a big Packers fan and you want to go off of my record thing here, if that Jaguars, Bears, and Vikings game goes the other direction, I mean, you could be at like 13-4. I'm not quite that high on the Packers, but I think the potential is there to win a lot of games, and I honestly have them slipping on some that they might be the favorite in, like the Chicago game and like the Vikings game. But being a divisional game, that Chicago game, in my opinion, could go either way. I know, again, the Packers have that record against them with, Rodgers being there for a long time. They won there last year too, but it should be a new-look Bears, and that's how confident I am in the Bears looking different this year. Overall, though, if you're going to take anything away from this, it's just that I see this being a very competitive division. I mean, I have them splitting with the Bears and the Vikings. I think it was going to be a very exciting year for the Packers, but I do have them tying with the Bears at 10-7, trying to get into that playoff spot. So again, it would not shock me if they went 11-6. I do think the Packers are going to have a great season. So we'll see how that goes, but I think it'll be a very competitive year. At the end of the day, regardless of how competitive the division is, I think the Packers on their own are a really exciting and really young team to keep an eye on this season. I will definitely be watching a lot of the Packers this year. I'm very excited to see them. So let me know down below if you guys agree or disagree with this one. But again, I think going 10-7 would not surprise me though with that 11-6 range as well. Which means the final team to talk about is the Detroit Lions, who talk about, teams coming out of nowhere to be super competitive and divisions getting competitive. It's because of teams like this that are struggling for a while, then all of a sudden they just make all these changes, whether it's coaching or offense or defense, and all of a sudden they shoot to the top. That has definitely been the Lions, who going into this season, you got Super Bowl hopes in your mind. You have, you're competing with the best. You have your expectations at, winning it all. So really excited for the Lions. And just to quickly recap 2023 though, it was a great season. I could leave it at that, but to be more specific, Jared Goff, 4,575 yards, 30 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. Rushing-wise, David Montgomery, 1,000 yards with 13 touchdowns, and Jahmyr Gibbs with 945 yards rushing and 10 more touchdowns. It was a really good rushing attack. I think people that had Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy football were kind of panicking for those first few weeks when he wasn't really getting utilized. And then as the year went on, he got more and more reps. They utilized him more in the receiving game. It was clear they wanted him for a reason, and that's why they were so pumped where they drafted him. And again, really, really good rushing game for the Detroit Lions. And then receiving-wise, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. Accompanied by the rookie tight end with 889, but also 10 touchdowns. Amazing year from Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course, too. But the rookie tight end putting up 10 touchdowns with that many yards, I was not ready for that. I'm going to be honest. I thought he'd be pretty good in year one. Not quite that good in year one. Played all 17 games as well. Josh Reynolds, 608 and 5 touchdowns. And then Khalif Raymond, 489 and 1 touchdown. And then Jameson Williams, 354 and 2 touchdowns. And then also, for what's worth, Jahmyr Gibbs, another 316 and 1 touchdown. So, really, really good year for the Lions. I've said it before. I'm not sure what else to say. This is what you want. This is, when you're improving teams and you're looking at guys to draft and you're making moves in the offseason and free agency, whatever it may be, you want to kind of mesh like this. It's a well-built roster, just how I see the Bears performing this season. It's really all coming together for the Lions, and I hope they get to that Super Bowl. Defensively, Alex Anzalone had a pretty good year, and then Jack Campbell, again, the rookie, who, it's funny looking back on it because, last year's draft class for the Lions was criticized pretty heavily. I know I was kind of questioning some of the picks, like Jack Campbell, even Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, where they took him, completely proved me and everybody else wrong. Brian Branch, I think, was kind of just the steal of the draft. I think that was kind of accepted, but really good draft class. They got a lot of worth out of those guys. A lot of production. And then Kirby Joseph, pretty good season too from safety from them. Brian Branch, the rookie, he had a good year. 74 total tackles and 3 interceptions on the season with 7 tackles for loss as well. So really nice. And then, of course, Aiden Hutchinson, 11.5 sacks and 14 tackles for loss. He even defended 7 passes and had a pick. So that guy, great athlete, really good pick for them a couple seasons ago. But again, Lions, really, really good 2023 season. And so now going into 2024, they still have Jared Goff, you still have Montgomery, you still have St. Brown, you still have Jameson Williams. You do actually lose, not Khalif Raymond, but the other guy, I can't remember what his name is now for some reason. I know it's going to come to me in a second, so I'll say it whenever I remember. But Sam Laporta, you have 2. You got Brock Wright as well for backup tight end. And Taylor Decker, Graham Glasnow, Frank Ragnow, I lost my spot somehow. Kevin Zeitler, I'm not sure how to say that, to be honest, and Penny Sewell. So really good offensive line too. It's a well assembled roster. I'm not sure how else to put it, to be honest. Looking at this, you got David Montgomery, gets a lot of goal line carries, more of like a power back, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, very elusive. Very deadly in the receiving game as well. I think he actually improves on that a lot going into this season as well. I see, honestly, more receiving yards for him this season, I think. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the top receivers in the league at this point. Jameson Williams, who is really primed for a breakout year. I think if he really has another lackluster season, people will be kind of out on him. And I think the coaching staff will also have to kind of I'm not sure be out on him, but you gotta be thinking about drafting maybe another receiver in case it doesn't work out, unfortunately, with him. But again, you got Khalif Raymond there too, and I cannot remember the other guy's name. I had to check. It was Josh Reynolds. I'm not sure why I couldn't think of his name. But yeah, Lions offense going into this year, pretty much the same. I think it's just going to be, honestly, just as good. And then defensively, you still got Aiden Hutchinson on that D-line. You got Marcus Davenport there now. DJ Reader, although granted, he has come off like a quad tear, so pretty big injury. Jack Campbell's still there. Alex Anzalone is still there. You got Carlton Davis, you got Brian Branch, of course, still there. Kirby Joseph still there, and then you draft Terrion Arnold. Really, really good pick, and for where they got him and for it being a big team need, you really can't ask for much more than that. You get a day one starter who can honestly be, I think he could also be in the running for Defense Rookie of the Year. I really do. That might be a bit of a, hotter take. I don't really know, but he's a great player, and he's going to be in a great defense on a great team. I think it's definitely in the cards for him. So then to highlight just a few, some key players, some young guys, stuff like that. I really think the Lions have one of the more exciting rosters in the NFL. I think they're just one of the more likable teams in general because they've just been, just kind of bad for so long. But they have a really just exciting offense and defense to watch. I think they have a lot of great athletes. I gave Jameson Williams the eyes. I'm really not confident enough to give him the star. I think he's definitely able to break out, but I don't know. Something is just kind of holding me back on that. And to be honest, I'd rather give the star to Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. Two guys that, they were honestly stars in year one. I think they only get better. So I gave them both the star. And then Penei Sewell I gave the gem to. I think he is a top 5 to, 6, 7-ish type of tackle in the NFL. So again, really exciting. I wish I could give James Williams the star, but I'm just not totally sold on him. Then defensively, Aiden Hutchinson I gave the gem to as well. I see him this season establishing himself as like a top 5 to, again, 6, 7, maybe even 8 pass rusher in the NFL. Terrion Arnold I gave the eyes to. You could really give him a star, but I figured because I was more kind of conservative with my guess on Jameson Williams, I'd be a bit more conservative with my pick for him too. But again, I could see him being a star in year one. Regardless, I gave the star to Brian Branch and Jack Campbell, two guys I think can take huge steps off their really good year ones. And, again, not a whole lot's really changed. They can just go out there and do the same thing, be even better. I don't see them being any worse. That is for sure. So that's just kind of how I see some of those key players working out for Detroit. And again, like I've said for other teams, you got a tough schedule, but I do think the Lions are kind of, best of the best at this point. They are the tough team on a lot of those teams' schedules. Not to say they won't be competitive, but they are, in my opinion, one of the best teams in the NFL. Looking at their schedule, you got your division games will be tough. You do have some pretty tough out of division opponents like Dallas. You got to play Houston. Buffalo should be relatively tough. And then of course San Francisco, but I think the Lions are really, the best of the best at this point. I think they are top 5 or so team in the NFL. So let's just get into my actual record prediction. Actually, before that, the little graph thing. I gave the Lions an S tier offense ranking, which is the highest you can get, at least how I'm doing this. I think it's going to be a very dynamic offense. It should be really exciting to watch. I'm not sure how it would be any worse, to be honest. I know you do lose Josh Reynolds, but I think if Jameson Williams can take that next step, he can be even more productive than Reynolds was. So I'm not too worried about that as of right now. And I gave their offense an A, or their defense an A to an A+. I think they got better. They added Terrion Arnold. You got, DJ Reader if he can stay healthy. It's a great roster on both sides of the ball. So overall, A+ roster. I'm really excited for the Lions this season. And so now that we got that out of the way, for the record, I have the Lions going 12-5. And, I think they lose in Lambeau. I think that will be a competitive game. I think they lose in Houston as well. And I have the Bills come to Detroit and beating them. It just seems like one of those games that Josh Allen just kind of goes off in. And, they got to lose at home at some point, in my opinion. So I have them dropping to the Bills. I have them losing to the Bears, though, in Chicago. It is typically pretty competitive. And I think the Bears are an improved unit. So I did give the Bears the win there. And then I gave San Francisco the win in San Francisco. But, other than that, I think they beat the Rams. I think they beat the Buccaneers, the Cardinals. I mean, you guys can see it. I think they go into Dallas and win. I think they go into Indianapolis and win. I think they hold, I think they, take care of business at home against all their divisional opponents. So, I don't know. I think the Lions go 12-5, and honestly, if anything, they probably go better than this. I think they could even be a game better if they end up beating Buffalo and beating, Chicago. They could end up going, 14-3. I think that's definitely in the cards. I had 12-5 though. overall, regardless, I see a huge year for the Lions, you know, still competing for the Super Bowl. That's really like where their kind of expectations are, what they're looking for. And I think, you know, the talent is there on this roster to realistically get to that point. And so with that, make sure to comment down below what you guys agree and disagree with as far as my predictions. You know, it should be a really exciting NFL season. It should be a really exciting, you know, NFC North to watch throughout the year. Again, one of these once a week, basically up until the season starts. So if you enjoyed, hit the subscribe button. I would really, really appreciate that for more NFL content. I do this. I do player rankings, team rankings, draft content around that time of the year, and then just other videos on NFL news, storylines throughout the season, trades, all that kind of stuff. So thank you guys for watching. I do really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.